Hairylocks and the Three Fairies. Once upon a time there was a girl called Hairylocks. Hairylocks had a lot of hair. One day when Hairylocks was playing in the woods, she spotted a fairy house. "Wow, a fairy house!" said Hairylocks. "I'd love to look inside." Apart from her hair, Hairylocks was actually quite small, so she managed to squeeze through the tiny door. She saw 3 chairs and decided to try each one. The first chair was too soft. The second chair was too hard, but the third chair was just right. Hairylocks sat on the chair, but the chair broke. Next, she saw 3 pairs of slippers and decided to try each pair. The first pair were too tight. The second pair were too big, but the third pair seemed just right, so she squeezed her feet into the slippers but couldn't get them out. So she decided to keep them on. Hairylocks was feeling a little sleepy, so she thought she'd go upstairs and find a bed to rest her head. She saw 3 fairy beds and decided to try each one. The first fairy bed was too bumpy. The second fairy bed was too lumpy, but the third fairy bed was just right. So Hairylocks lay down and fell fast asleep. In the meantime, the 3 fairies came home. Dairy Fairy had milked all the cows in Fairyland and wanted a sit down. Airy Fairy had been to the hairdresser's and felt like putting on her slippers and watching TV. Millionaire Fairy had just come back from the airport, having been on a long flight, and was ready for a nap. The fairies noticed that the chairs were in different positions. "Someone has been sitting on my chair," called Airy Fairy.
"Someone has been sitting on my chair,"
shouted Millionaire Fairy. "Someone has been sitting on my chair and they have broken it into pieces," sobbed Dairy Fairy. The fairies saw that their slippers had been thrown across the floor. "Someone has been wearing my slippers," called Dairy Fairy.
"Someone has been wearing my slippers," shouted Millionaire Fairy.
"Someone has been wearing my slippers and they must still be wearing them because they have gone," sobbed Airy Fairy, who was so looking forward to putting them on. The fairies went upstairs. The fairies noticed that someone had left the bedroom door open. "Someone has been sleeping in my bed," called Dairy Fairy. "Someone has been sleeping in my bed," shouted Airy Fairy.
"Someone has been sleeping in my bed and they are still in it,"
cried Millionaire Fairy, who was already missing her nap. Hairylocks woke up and jumped out of bed. She flew through the air, down the stairs, and out of the fairy house as quick as possible. From that day on, Hairylocks only ever went to friends' houses with permission from her mum and dad, and the 3 fairies always remembered to lock their door. The end.